Good evening, everyone. All right, I think we've got some audio coming through okay, so that's good. Excellent. Right, well, yeah, welcome back, everyone, to another Firestorm Studio stream. My name's Pat, and tonight we are going to be continuing with our Godzilla from last week. So we are on the letter G of our A to Z of Zbrush creatures. So thank you all very much for joining me this evening, and I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone's Monday has started well. It's a Monday, so I know how, Mondays are Mondays. It's what it is. So yes, we are going to be continuing with Godzilla this evening. And something that, if you caught the stream last week, you will probably remember that things looked a little bit different than they do now. We were going with a more kind of full-fledged image and kind of diorama style, but when I was looking back at it in kind of preparation for this week, so generally the way it works is that if we have, or if I have a break in between a couple of my streams, I will spend maybe 5-10 minutes just looking at the model I've created in the first session, and I kind of decide there and then whether or not I think it's worth keeping or whether or not we should start from scratch again the following week. I decided that we don't need to start from scratch with this one, but I felt as though we could maybe dial it back a bit and focus more on a bit more of a bust of Godzilla rather than the kind of full-fledged thing. So I'm still trying to figure out how I want to break that up, but I'm going to start by slicing down his back spikes a little bit. So while I think about what it is I want to kind of, what pose I might want to put it in, how I want to kind of move forward with the rest of the bust. And that will give you all plenty of time to think up any questions, tell me how your week was, all that kind of thing. Because as always, folks, this is a open-ended stream. That's how these streams kind of work. We obviously have a theme that we're working on, but if there's other questions that people may have, or things that they want to know about the industry, ZBrush, Maya, retopology, UV mapping, rigging, if you have a question, feel free to ask it. If I can't answer it, then I will point you in the direction of someone that I think can, either on our Firestorm Discord or somewhere else in the bowels of the internet. All right, okay. So, yeah, let's jump straight in and let's start by cutting up the spikes on the back here. So what I'd like to do is I want to follow this line that I've got here. So I'm just going to use the cut tool to do something like this. And this is already looking a little bit too kind of wide for what I want, but it is kind of cutting it in kind of a way I want. Let's see here. Let's just turn off the dynamic perspective, see how that looks. You know, we probably actually got it right the first time, but you know, them's the breaks. That'll do. Excellent. So as always, folks, like I said, I do hope everyone has started their week off well. I don't know wherever you are in the world, but here in the UK, it's been a bit of a mix. You know, weather's been kind of rotten. I mean, you know, that's kind of par for the course in the UK. It's rarely very nice, but sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you get lucky. All right, so now that I've kind of got this sculpted out, as in I've cut down the size of the scales. Now, I've probably went overboard with the size of the scale, I think. I have. So I'm quickly going to mask this out. And I'm just going to, I mean, I'm probably going to redo the scales anyway, but just from a visual perspective, I want to resize some of these. something like that. I'm going to pull this down. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to expand up what I'm essentially using as I'm using it as my file name, but I think I'm going to use it as somewhat of a base as well. Say, for example, we wanted to 3D print this. And this is something as well that if you have any kind of queries or questions on, I've done a lot of 3D printing of my models myself. I've done commissions for 3D printed objects as well, so feel free to ask away. Hey Chris, thanks very much. Damn right, we got some Godzilla going on. I like it. I like the emoji. Very cool. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to cut this as well, like that. Except, why did that do it the wrong way? Let's see if we can get. Oh, I got the. What is going on there? Why is that being? So, okay. I think I'm just having a bit of a, yeah, my brain's just wasn't thinking there, folks. My apologies. Whenever you're using the cut tool in ZBrush, you want to make sure that the gradient, this gradient line that we have here, whichever way that gradient line is pointing, whichever direction it's pointing, is where your cut is going to happen. So for example, if I drag across here, the gradient is pointing towards the bottom right corner of the screen. So when I release it, it's going to slice that part off. All right. And I'm just going to clean this up a little bit more. There we go. Something like that. And then we'll do the same for excellent. Okay, now that we've kind of got that sorted out, we'll do a quick save and then we're going to get stuck straight into the actual sculpting of it. And always quick save before using it. That's a very good point. Chris actually brings up a very good point about the knife curve tool in ZBrush. Now, depending on what version of ZBrush you're currently using, you may be finding some instability in the software with the knife curve tool. They have patched it out in the latest version, so touch wood, I haven't actually had any crashes with it, but it's just something to be aware of. Okay, love from India, hand pink waving. Hey Sakat, thank you very much, much appreciated. Always appreciate it. Thank you. As always, folks, do let me know if the audio is coming through clear, loud enough for everyone to hear, or if it's too loud, let me know as well, and I can adjust. Right, so as I said, we're going to get stuck in here and actually start sculpting. So I've got my other reference off screen here. And before we get stuck into sculpting, I want to fix the neck. I've kind of approached it in a more, the shape of the character's head here is a little bit more akin to the original Toho design from the 50s, rather than the one from, you know, where the head is bigger, which I've done deliberately. I actually don't particularly like how small the head is for the new version of Godzilla. I feel like they made his head too small. So I'm going for a more Toho-sized head. But I do want to fix the the throat here a bit and bring this out a bit more. So I want to kind of blend the Toho design and the new design a little bit for my version of Godzilla. I mean, it's going to be very similar to the new ones. I didn't want to completely change it up, but the head always bothered me. This image I have here, my spotlight, is more akin to the kind of size of head that I'm kind of aiming for, which looks very different from these here. So, all right. And what we're going to do, just to make our lives a bit easier, same as we did last time, I'm going to take the lower jaw and we're going to separate that out for the time being. So we're going to split unmasked points. And just check how much of that. So we need that bit in there as well. And let's just hide that. So I want to take a little part of this here. I want to keep that because that's going to give me something to connect the lower jaw into. And then we're going to take the top section. Let me see here. There we go. Why has that? Oh, interesting. What's going on there? There we go. Looks like I've accidentally brought that version back, so we'll get rid of it. There we go. So I'm going to delete hidden. So now we have the top section of the head and the lower jaw now as separate parts. So I'm going to dynamesh these together, but to make my life a bit easier, I'm just going to fill in the back of the head here. So I'm going to take a polysphere with an insert mesh brush, just drag that out into the mesh and start filling up the space, like so. Axios Art. Hey, Axios Art, how you doing? Thank you very much for coming along. So now that that's done, I'll go into my geometry, into Dynamesh, and just do a quick Dynamesh. Not enough resolution, so we're going to turn off blur and just increase the res a bit. That'll work. Mirror and weld it. Switch back over to the head section here. Just going to have a quick look around to see if there's any gaps that are bothering me before I Dynamesh this. And so far, I don't see anything that's concerning me. This could be a problem. Just on the inside of the head here, we could have a bit of an issue. So let's address that by masking out that section and just using the move brush to bring that forward a bit. There we go. Make sure it's not protruding out of the nose. And I'll maybe pull put mask by poly group on here. Just going to move this up a bit. There we go. Excellent. Same again, we're going to Dynamesh here. Hit Dynamesh. A little bit higher, take off the blur. Can we work with that? Turn off blur. I'm going to turn on project. That's better. It's not, I know it's quite messy. Don't worry about that. That's all right. It's okay. It's a little bit messy. We can fix that later on. Yeah, we can work with that. How does it smooth? It smooths quite well. So what I'm going to do now that I've Dynameshed is I'm going to run my smooth brush over some of the more important areas. And it might look like I'm just kind of scribbling across, but I'm not. I am thinking about where I'm smoothing down the mesh. Screezilla. Yes, Godzilla indeed. So hopefully we'll get somewhere a bit more, make him look a bit more like Godzilla this time than we did last week. Last week we were more just exploring, and that's something that's quite common whenever you're starting a new project. Well, it's quite common for me, is that I can sometimes spend a couple of hours just sketching things out, having a look, seeing how the model is actually going to work, and you will and might just change your mind several times throughout the course of it. And I am going to do my best to try and stop zooming the model out so far so that you can see what I'm doing. It's something that I've become quite prone to doing because I want to make sure everything's reading from a further distance, so I tend to zoom out quite far when I'm working. So I'm just using the trim dynamic here as a sort of smooth brush. just to plane off some of the edges. Paying close attention to my reference the whole time though. I'm going to take my dam standard here, and from the brow, I know that I've got a shape that's going to come into here, in this side. And this is kind of where we've got a bit of a plane change on the body, and also kind of accentuated by some spikes and some, what you could really just describe them as large plates rather than scales. For this section here under the eye, I'm just going to smooth that in. I don't want to lose all this work that we did with the shaping beforehand. We still want to keep everything looking quite planar and quite hard surface for him. Smooth back what we need to for the interior of the mouth. We've got a couple of holes and things here that from the Dynamesh, and this is just where there wasn't enough geometry to close everything down, but we'll fix that shortly. That's not going to be a big problem. Take my clay tubes brush here and do a little bit of work, just building in a bit of extra form. Coming round from the cheek and up towards the bridge of the nose. Take the dam standard just to sketch out his brow. So you can see here, because of the way that we used our Dynamesh by turning on project, what it's going to do with that is it's going to focus primarily on the harder edges, and it's going to try and project the original detail back automatically while it Dynameshes. But what that can lead to is very inconsistent tessellation of your mesh. So that's something to be aware of. It's really useful, but as long as you're aware of it, okay? And you can see there that I'm hitting a limitation. I'm hitting a limitation with my brush here because there's just not enough geometry there. This is where you could use something like Sculptris Pro to add in extra detail if you need it, but I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to work with the topology I've got right now and see what else I can do. But yeah, so I hope everyone had a nice weekend as well. Hope everyone was enjoying the weather. It was actually quite nice in the UK in different parts. Let me see here. Yeah, I need to grab my move brush and just square the nose off a bit. There we go. I'm also going to bring the lower jaw in shortly. I just want to outline the upper jaw for the time being. I do have a reference here of him roaring, just so I can see. We finally had some sun. Yes, that's good to hear. I know it's been. I've got a friend of mine who's in Berlin right now, and it looked very cold. And they mentioned to me that it was indeed very cold. So I do miss Berlin, actually. I haven't been to Berlin in over 10 years, but I very much enjoyed it while I was there. Okay, so I'm going to focus now on just the inside of the mouth here. It's too hard surface. you know, it's not looking natural enough. We want this lip, obviously, where the edge of the mouth is going to go, but we want to soften this off a little bit as well. Make it look a bit natural where the gums are going to go. And the way that his mouth is designed, there is actually a gum line underneath, but some of the teeth do seem to kind of protrude over. They're very, very close to the lip line. So it's not like totally similar to a crocodile or an alligator where some of the teeth are actually, you know, stuck in, you know, protrude from the, or appear to protrude from the scales themselves. So, and I'm just going to now use this opportunity to roughly outline the upper part of his mouth, which looks a bit like that. Very hard to tell at this early stage with a geo, but or it certainly will, it probably will to you folks. I can see that it's actually quite close, but so the downside, I mean, I'd love to be able to share all the reference, but you've got to be very careful. Okay, and I can also use this now to outline where the nostrils need to go. Just about there. Then we've got slight indentation where his lip is. Okay, let's bring back the rest of our... He looks really goofy without his without his lower jaw. So we'll give him his lower jaw back. And let me see. Okay. Again, what I'm doing here is I'm just going to outline where the end of this kind of cheekbone area now lines up. We looked at this last week as well. This is going to be one of our guides. It's our center line for the plates that run down the side of his neck. And then the lower part of his mouth down here is where that secondary part goes. So we get the full width of the plate. I'm just going to do something like that. And then I can work around that now with the rest of my mesh. And remember, anytime you're doing work like this, you are of course always open to do your own interpretation of the character. In fact, I would suggest it. If there's anything that that doesn't really kind of click with you from a design perspective that you like, then yeah, change it. Play around with it. As I said, I'm more or less quite like it. I just don't. It's just for me, as I said, it's the size of the head. It's the size of the head that just always bothered me. It was really funny because when they did a Godzilla reboot in the late 90s, in 1998, when I'm sure many of you were probably born, and it was so weird. I mean, I believe at the time, I think it was pretty well received by kids. I know because I was one of them, and I thought it was cool because it was a very different take on Godzilla, and Godzilla was designed by a very kind of a legendary. Hey, Polly, thanks for coming along. He was designed by a legendary kind of character designer called Patrick Tatopoulos, who designed the creatures for Independence Day in the 90s. And that was actually, I think that's one of my earliest memories of knowing who a specific, knowing who a specific person was that started to design some of these things. And at this point, I was at this point learning everything I could about movies. So I was devouring any kind of behind the scenes stuff. And when I was growing up, behind the scenes material was normally reserved for films that were really popular. So if the film didn't really do well, you didn't really get a lot of material to kind of learn about. So talked to some people, and they had an art director that said, if you can't do it one-to-one to the concept, then you failed as it. Wow. Okay. Okay. I feel like I have to. I don't know. Do people would people like me to kind of weigh in on that? Sound out in the comments if you would like me to weigh in on that story, and I will happily weigh in on that. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Hey, Manik. So, hang on, folks. I want to make sure that I'm getting the eye right here, because his eyes are really small. They really made his eyes really small with this design. Yeah. Okay, I think I know how I'm going to approach that. So, yeah. Okay, so to kind of address that, to say that you've failed as a character artist if you are unable or if you can't match a concept one-to-one is a really odd way of saying it. And I'm going to give, I suppose I should give a little bit of benefit of the doubt that, maybe he misspoke. It happens, these things happen. You do sometimes misspeak when the stress of the job can take its toll. Okay, that does happen. But no, I would have to disagree on the comment that you failed as a character artist if you cannot match a concept one-to-one. Now, it all depends as well on what they mean by one-to-one. It's an interesting thing because that's quite vague, because it's actually almost impossible to match it one-to-one, simply due to the fact that you're switching into a different medium. I think what he should have really said is, and I still don't, and I think to say that you failed as a character artist is kind of, it's just very dramatic thing to say. A bit overly dramatic. Sounds like it might have been an attempt at a bit of a pep talk as well. Okay, and I'm trying to be as fair here as possible with it. But no, I don't think that is a very true statement. I think that's a pretty unfair statement. So no, you have not failed as an artist if you do not match a concept one-to-one, because it's subjective as well. And I've never worked on a concept in my entire career that matched one-to-one when it hit the screen. Never. To screen, game, when you look at art books, you can go, yes, there's the character, there's the final concept art for the character, and then you see what it looks like when it hits the theaters or appears in the game. It's very, very close, particularly in games. It's very, very, very close, but it's never one-to-one. And I would really love to know exactly what he meant in regard to, or what they meant in regard to one-to-one, because you can match details one-to-one, but it might not necessarily look like the concept on a one-to-one basis. Simply, again, because of the nature of interpreting from 2D into 3D. So that would be my take on it. I think I'm feeling as though the guy has maybe misspoke a little bit. That's what I would hope in that regard, because I think that's a very, I think it's a very unwise thing to say to people, and to have such a blanket statement that you have failed as a character artist is a very strange thing to say. Because here's the thing, right? There's people out there that are amazing artists, fantastic artists, have been doing it for 30 years, and they might not actually be great at doing, say, a likeness of someone. But then you've got somebody who's been doing it for doing modeling and stuff for 5 years who's amazing at likenesses. Does that mean, but they're amazing at likenesses, but they're really not great at doing stylized stuff? Does that mean both of those people have failed as artists because they can't work in every single discipline? No, not at all. It's such an odd thing to say. It's a very narrow-minded thing to say, I believe. But as I said, I have a feeling that this art director has probably misspoken. That's how I would hope that has transpired, and I think I'm being pretty fair with that in that regard. So anyway, so there we go. That's my thoughts on that. I don't think it's a very fair thing to say. What an odd thing to say. But then again, it's each to their own in some ways. I mean, I would never say that to artists. Failed as an artist because you didn't match it. What an odd thing to say. So yes, there's my thoughts on that. In regard to, yeah. But you're gonna hear things like that. That's the thing. The industry is going to be, you are going to be tested in the industry. Okay, this is something that rarely gets taught in schools, and people don't talk about it very often. But you will be tested in the industry, not necessarily not an official test or anything, but you're. I'm going to use a really old-fashioned word here. Surprise, surprise. Old man Pat uses an old-fashioned word. I'm going to use the word gumption, and it's what people might people might reference it as having a thicker skin. And what I really want to make clear here is, you should not allow people to treat you badly in the industry. You don't do that. That is a boundary. Do not let anyone cross that. You do not let anybody treat you poorly or badly, and in a way that is illegal or any of that nonsense. Okay, but you will come across people who will challenge you in good and bad ways, and that is one of the things that you cannot just learn from a tutorial. You have to learn it through experience in the industry, and I mean any industry, any job. And it's more just about having the kind of life experience to put up with situations that are uncomfortable. You're maybe not feeling the most confident one day, and then someone pushes you and starts to try and push your buttons to see if they can get a rise out of you. And the one thing I can say, and that I would say here, is that whenever somebody does try and push you in that way, stay calm. Don't react in a bad way, because that's what it sounds. I know it sounds really cheesy, but it is what these people want. They want you to react in a bad way. That's what they're hoping for. And it's funny because I wouldn't have actually said this type of stuff a few years ago, but I'm now at the point where I'm like, no, people need to hear this. People need to hear this. Nobody has the right to treat you badly just because they're paying you to do a job. And sadly, there's a lot of people that think they can. So, and I'm here to tell you that's not the case. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my stager, hit that to home stage, and then I'm going to rotate the jaw up and hit target stage. So now I can switch between it. What this is actually going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to make changes to the... Excuse me, folks. Sorry, excuse me. Just going to take a short break, folks. Hi there folks, and we're back. Sorry about that. Brief explanation for what just happened. So earlier today I walked into a door and quite badly. I walked into the door quite badly and obviously it caused a nosebleed. And yes, and that was a little bit of an aftershock, shall we say. So I didn't think that was something that people on the stream wanted to see, so we had to take a short break. Anyway, so let's just hope that we can get through the rest of the stream without that happening. I'm completely fine, Polly. Thank you. I appreciate that. No, it's just I walked into the door earlier on today, and yeah, it's a little bit of an aftershock from that. Just one of those things. But a little bit embarrassing, folks, but it's one of these things that happens. MF Chiller, thank you very much for the follow. That's completely made up for the fact we had to put a bit of a break on there while I dealt with a small injury. Anyway, we shall continue as I drink my cold tea. And we'll continue with our Godzilla. Okay, so as I was saying, yes, the whole subject of, I guess, like I said, you know, when you're in the industry, you will be challenged a lot. And it's not just we're going to challenge you and see how hard we can push you. It's not about that. You'll be challenged in a lot of different ways. You know, it'll be things like, you know, your stress level, your knowledge will be challenged, and it's good to have these things challenged and pushed because that's how you improve. What I'm trying to get across here is that there's nothing wrong with being pushed and challenged so that you can become better at who you are as an artist and what it is that you do as a specialism. But there is a boundary line that must not be crossed. And unfortunately, sometimes it can be by some people in the industry, but not just our industry, every industry in the world that will happen. And in every walk of life, you will be, boundaries like that will be crossed. What I'm saying is that at that point, you have to, that's when you have to put a stop to something in that regard, okay? So, and I speak from experience in that regard where I never did that I didn't do that a few times earlier on in my career. And I wish I had. So, let's just do a little bit more cleanup on the lower jaw here. And we were looking at the stager, and the reason that I like using the stager for things like this is that I can switch between the jaw opening and closing, but I can go in and actually make adjustments at either stage of that. At either point, I can make an adjustment and it will propagate into the other one, all right? So this is going to allow me to adjust how the jaw actually closes. Let's see. Let me see. So I do have one, I've got a front view of him, and it's actually working pretty well, actually. Quite. There we go. Let's just pull out these sections here. So yes, so again, folks, I apologize about the sudden departure there, but everything is a-okay. Switch back to this and let's see how that's looking. Yeah, that's looking all right. I'm just going to make a few changes to this lower section here in the jaw. I just want to expand this out, smooth it out a bit more. We still have some of these areas that there was too much of a gap for the Dynamesh. So we will have to address that at some point. But I want to block out the rest of the character first. Now, I do have a shot of him roaring here that's going to give me a bit more indication to the interior of the lower jaw. So that's going to look something like, oops, it's going to look something like that. There we go. Yeah. Oops. Oh, I've broken it. I broke it. So what we'll do is we're going to go to our target stage and we're going to hit switch target stage and home stage. Turn them off and I'm going to rotate it back down. Hit home stage, rotate it up. Whoa, what is going on there? And put that back to target stage. There we go. Not sure how I managed that, but I did. Okay. We're just going to make sure that this all lines up without looking too goofy. Right. Then what I think we'll do, because I want to start bringing this all together now, so I'm going to hide the lower jaw, I'm going to bring the torso up, and I'm going to blend these together. I'm going to hide the... so I'm thinking that we're going to end up, this is going to end up as a probably a 3-part stream, I reckon. Because I don't want to rush Godzilla, because Godzilla is cool. But we'll see where we get to by the end of this stream. So with these now merged down, I am going to hold Control and click. No, what happened there? That is not what I wanted to happen. There we go. I'm going to hold Control and click so that I can save this history state. Hey CC, thank you very much for coming along. Hey Dennis, thank you for coming along. So now that I've got this history state saved, I can do a Dynamesh. I'm going to turn off project and we're going to Dynamesh. It's actually not bad. Is this a yelling? Not too bad. That's actually come out better than I expected. I might not have to project as much as I was thinking, but I still will. But let's do a little bit of cleanup here. So again, I've decided that I think I might sculpt this as though we were going to make a 3D print out of it. Okay. So this is how I would normally approach this kind of thing. Although at the moment there's a lot of it that's just too thin, depending on the type of printing that you want to do. And this won't be the only time that we're doing 3D printed kind of style models. There's a few models that we've got coming up in this series that will be prepared for 3D print. And you can see that now that we've done our Dynamesh, we've lost all of those kind of errored areas that were causing all the problems. But we have lost quite a bit of detail that I want to get back. So I'm going to do something that you really shouldn't do, is I'm going to hit Control D to subdivide my Dynamesh. And then I'm just going to delete lower. Now I'm going to go into my subtool palette and do a project history. See how that looks. Okay. but I don't want to do it down here. I only want the project history to be on this section here. So we're going to mask this out like so, and then do a project history. Perfect. Let's bring back the lower jaw now. And now we need to start blocking out more of the actual kind of plate sections. Okay, so we've already outlined, I'm going to just reinforce this outline here. So that's the back section, and this mid section here goes back round about here, and then comes forward like this. So at the moment, all I'm doing is sketching out just a few indicators where this detail has to be, and that's going to come down like this. And then one of the design elements I really liked was the kind of what are obviously gills on him, which makes sense because he's an aquatic animal. I love that. I love the fact that they added gills to him in a really obvious but quite subtle way. So they're going to go in about there. We're going to get some scales around about here, and then we get onto the kind of chest plate section, something like this. And then all the way down here, I'm going to grab the move. Where am I? I need my snake hook brush. Everyone knows how much I like the snake hook brush. And we are going to turn on AccuCurve. And I'm just going to start grabbing a few areas here, roughly where I think these need to go. Yeah, that works. Okay. Now, let's get the shape sorted out now. Start bringing this back. Get it more similar to the 2014 and 2019 design. Okay, looks like I made a bit of an error with where I put the details in here, so we're just going to smooth all this back. And that's something I would always say, don't worry about, you know, literally sketching stuff out onto the model and then getting rid of it all. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's exactly the same as if you're actually sketching in a sketchbook. You're just trying to find the form sometimes. Okay. So I'm going to pull this in a bit more. Let's get the, like I said, we're going to start getting the building up the shape now for these scales. So we're going to be slowing down a little bit now. And I'm increasing the preserve edge just to give myself a smoother transition here. Now, I do have to make a decision at some point about where I want the head to go. Let me check the time here. Okay, we're already an hour in, folks. So I'm using my preserve edge to just build up where I want the plates to go, or preserve edge on my brush. And this is going to ensure that I get a smoother overlap and stroke with my brush. And then we'll do the same with the top section. You'll see that what I'm doing here is I'm using the symmetry obviously to my advantage, and I'm pulling this into the middle because there is a raised section on his head and all the way down his back. Still really not nailing the neck, the front of the neck here yet though. So I think what we'll do is we will grab the lower jaw here and switch that back to, where is it? Stager. I really need to put the stager on my custom shelf. There we go. Back to that stage there. Oh, that's a much better, I've got a much better image here of the neck now, so that's handy. So, oh, I see what I've done wrong. I see what I've done wrong. Okay. So, I'm just going to quickly sketch out on the neck where I feel everything needs to go. So that there is the kind of front of the throat. And then we have what I would, it's not an SCM muscle, but it's what I would it's what it looks most like. Round about here. And then that peels off up to the top here. And you've got a little bit more in the way of wrinkles. And this is where we're starting to now work back up into the rest of the body. So we're just going to smooth this back off, like so. And grab the damn standard again. And these lines are really good because I can use these as guides for myself when I want to lay out where the scales are going to go. So now this is going to go where it's leading down onto the rest of his, onto his pec, and then over to the round of his mouth. With his mouth open, he looks kind of like he said something offensive to him. He does, doesn't he? He does have that kind of a, what did you just say to me? What did you call me? So, and then up here is where the gills kind of sit, and just up at this section here. They're actually a lot smaller than they appear. Okay. And then this section here comes out much, much further. And this is where all the, I'm going to use the inflate brush here, but I'm going to change the alpha to something a bit harsh, like an alpha 6, just so it's really obvious. Maybe increase the intensity a bit. And that's going to really pull that off the surface for the time being. There we go. And we'll make it a little bit lower in intensity for the middle section, but we'll still want to kind of add that in. There we go. And then we'll do the same for the top section. Just increase that intensity. I think what we'll do now is we'll save, and I think we're going to do a little bit of a repose here, because I'm looking at this reference image I've got, and I quite like the fact that he's kind of leaning forward and screaming, so I think I'm going to follow through with that. So what we'll do is we're going to go into the T-pose mesh, and if you've never used this before in ZBrush, you'll find it under Z plugin, Transpose Master, T-pose mesh, and T-pose/sub-T. What this is going to allow us to do is to take all of the subtools that we have in our subtool stack. It will, if there's subdivision surfaces on them, it will set them all to their lowest, combine them into a temporary mesh that we can then pose and manipulate, and then we can go back to those individual subtools, we can revert it back and continue sculpting. It's a great system. I really like the Transpose Master tool. However, it can be a bit tricky getting used to. T-pose is very rad. It is. One of the things I would say though is that if you are going to use it and you're in the middle of a pose, right? So say for example, we had to stop what we were doing. Maybe it was the end of the day, or you know, like the live streamer got a nosebleed due to an injury sustained earlier in the day and had to kind of stop briefly. And we had to save our mesh, okay? Here's the really important rule that you have to remember. When you're using the T-pose system or the Transpose Master system in ZBrush, if you have your character in this T-pose mode, okay, where everything is combined, make sure you save a Z project, okay? File, save as, Z project, rather than a tool, save as, Z tool. If you save it as a Z tool, you'll not be able to get your subtools back, not without any great difficulty. But if you save it as a Z project, it will retain all of that information and you'll be able to go back and forth between the two different poses, okay? And that's only if you're saving it in the middle of this this system. So my recommendation would be is don't like pose halfway and then leave it till the next day. Finish what you're doing, come back out of the T-pose mesh mode, and then save your file normally. Okay. Anyway, so just a little thing, folks. Okay, so that's interesting. Oh, mask by polygroup's on. That's why. Oops. There we go. So now I'm just going to need to find the right point that I want to rotate this from. Maybe soften it a little bit more as well. Let me just get my reference out. Oh, I see what's happened. Okay, this is my bad. I'm not rotating it properly. I need to do, I actually need to do something like this. I'm ignoring his anatomy, so it's more like this. And then there's a smaller change round about here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the Transpose Master line out further, and then that's going to allow, make sure I mask this one as well. It's going to give me a much softer rotation. But you know what, let's maybe bring this forward. There we go. And then we're going to take the whole head, really soften that mask. And then from just about here, okay. So you can see what the problems we're having. We're getting a bit of a fold here at the back of the head. That can be normal, but if we don't want that, we sometimes have to just fake it a little bit. Yeah, that looks cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remask it and then do another rotation from here and just move that up. Mirage, hey, how are you? I'm doing well, Mirage. How are you? Thank you for coming along. So I was stretching out the neck a bit more than I wanted there. So all I'm doing is readjusting and getting that into the position I want. That's better. Don't worry about the neck. I can fix the neck easily. It's the... There we go. Let's check that out. Yeah, that looks cool. Let me just check my reference here. Yeah, that'll do. Okay. So let's now mask out the everything except the lower neck. Now, when you're in the transpose mode or T-pose mesh mode, I would recommend not, wherever possible, wherever you can, try not to do any kind of sculpting if you can avoid it. Using the move brush is normally okay, but I wouldn't kind of go in and sculpt anything. It can sometimes lead to problems. You can just wait until you get back to the standard subtool mode in order to make that work. Of course, I forgot to put symmetry on, so what's this? I'm good. Made a placeholder for my game, but I don't know how to improve myself for the texture painting. I did it with my mouse. Okay, I don't know how to improve myself for the texture painting. So is it something particular about the texture that's causing you problem, Mirage, that you're just not sure how to improve it, as in that regard, as you're not happy with it overall? Give us, if you go into a bit more detail, we might be able to help. Might be able to give you a couple of pointers possibly. No guarantees, but you never know. Because it all depends. I mean, the quality of a texture map can vary depending on the style that you're going for, so, and whether or not it's stylized or not doesn't really matter. Because stylization and realism, neither is harder than the other, in my experience. They each have their own challenges. Okay. So now that I'm happy, more or less, with this, I'm going to go into Z plugin, transpose master, and T-pose to sub T. And now ZBrush is just going to go through all of those, and you can see how it's repositioned it, which is going to allow us to now go in and tweak what we've already done, like this. And looking at that, I can probably do a little bit more work now on just repositioning this part of Godzilla. Start readjusting the pose and the proportions. And eventually, obviously, we'll put a little bit more of an interesting pose on his head. Maybe have him turning to one side. But until then, I'm just going to leave it as is, just to make our lives a bit easier. And I really want to kind of get this open jaw in there as well. So, oh no, did not mean to do that. Let's soften that a little bit and then rotate it again. Okay. So now that we've got that in place, I'm going to start bringing this together more so that it starts to look a bit more natural. And now I can start finessing some of the skin in between and just changing how the mouth is going to behave. I think my graphic design, I can improve the future. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, sorry, I have to go for dinner. No problem, Mirage. No worries. No worries. But this is the thing, folks. Yeah, you know, there's that old adage that, you know, it's normally to do with, it's actually normally labeled at photographers, where they'll say, oh, the gear doesn't matter. The gear doesn't matter. And in most cases, no, it doesn't. You can create amazing artwork with the most basic of tools, i.e. a piece of piece of paper and a pencil, right? But when you're doing digital work, there is no denying that something like a graphics tablet it won't necessarily make your work better, but it will make it easier in regard to, it will make it quicker. It's less, there's, you know, less kind of hurdles in your way, okay? Because you can think more directly, you know, rather than kind of using a mouse and then trying to kind of interpret what's in your head that you would normally use a pen for, and then using a pencil and a mouse instead. It can be quite difficult. I have a friend of mine that uses Zbrush with a mouse all the time. I'm always just kind of in awe of him because I certainly couldn't do that. Well, we probably should get a tongue in there, right? But let's get a little bit more detailing done. Just going to smooth down the neck area here a bit. See you later, Mirage. Thank you very much for coming along. How are we doing, folks? All right, so we've got just under 60 people in the stream tonight. So welcome, everyone, and welcome back to another Firestorm stream. My name's Pat, and we are continuing with our A to Z of creatures. We're currently on G, so obviously that means we had to do Godzilla. Although part of me was hoping we would do a gibbon, because I like gibbons. I mentioned this last week, but you know, the vote said Godzilla, so we did Godzilla. It's just how it goes, really. Which is fine. You know, who doesn't want to see Godzilla? You know, Godzilla's cool. I'm just going to change the positioning of some of these lines now that we've done a bit of a repose. And just soften some of this stuff back. There we go. So yes, so we are currently on G. Now, oh, what's this? There's always next time, Pat. Yep, there's always next time. Always next time. And if I have to, I'll just sculpt a gibbon on my, on my personal stream. But speaking of streams, folks, please do remember to tune in to the live streams that Firestorm Studios are holding all this week. There's going to be an entire raft of different software, demos, and tutorial style live streams all throughout this week. Please check out the Instagram for more information on that, just so that you can get the times and the people who are streaming on those days. And you can also check out the Discord as well for that information. Okay. Also, really recommend you go and check out the Discord anyway, even if you're not interested in live streams as such. An amazing community over there. It also gives you the chance to hang out with all of the Firestorm team. Most of us are there in the kind of voice chats, and you can ask questions, say hi, that kind of thing. And also, you'll keep up to date with all of the latest Firestorm news. And there's also the chance to find out more about mentoring, which is something that Firestorm offers. So if you're looking for a mentor, then check out Firestorm Studios. You won't be disappointed. So again, I'm taking a bit of creative license here because I really do want to try and keep the longer neck, larger head kind of from the Toho designs that I grew up with. So I am adapting things ever so slightly. Just noticed a detail that I really want to kind of introduce here. It's just coming up from, let me see here. There we go. Yeah, that's what I wanted. What's this? I have Julio. How much does the mentoring cost if you're able to go into any detail on that process? That I am not sure about, Julio. What I would recommend you do is jump over to Discord and reach out to someone like Heather. She might be able to give you a little bit more information on exactly the cost, because I think it's going to depend on a variety of factors. So that's about as much information I can give you there. All I would say is reach out to someone like Heather over in the Discord to find out more information on the costs. All right. Sorry, apologies, I can't be any more, give you any more details, but that's what I know. I knows what I know. And what I knows is not much. So, let's just clean up this a little bit more. Yeah, okay. So one thing that has been bothering me is the eyes, and that's mostly just because we can't really get in here to get the detail that we need, which is my fault. It's how I've decided to sculpt him. I haven't really left myself a huge amount of room in there to work with. So what I thought we might do is, if I can find a close-up of his eye, we will spend a little bit of extra time just kind of working that out. But what I want to do is I want to duplicate this part of the head out. So I'm going to duplicate the head, and then I'm going to use my selection rectangle and just do something like this. Okay, then we're going to go to delete hidden, and I'm going to do a close holes. Yeah, that's fine. And then just clean up this mesh a bit just by smoothing it. But I'm going to use the Sculptris Pro here just to smooth some of these details out. And what this is going to allow me to do is just to work selectively on one area. I'm going to save my file as well. So A to Z, Godzilla, Z-Tool, version 10. No problem, my pleasure. Sorry about that, folks. I needed to hydrate. Okay. So the reason I like to do it this way is what it allows me to do is to subdivide just the section I'm working on if I need to, or I can dynamesh it to a higher level, or in this case, what we're going to do, we're going to use some Sculptris Pro in a very select area, and then we can project this back on to our model later on. So I now can go in and just start sculpting the eye area. And I think what we'll do is we will use an insert mesh brush. Actually, you know what? We're going to use a curve brush here, actually. So we're going to go to curve tube snap, go into the stroke, curve modifier, turn on size, and in the curve fall off, we're going to make a curve that looks a little bit something like that. You can make the curve however you want. This is how I'm making my curve. And I'm just going to draw out. Oh, it's doing this again. Okay, I think it's the Sculptris Pro. Let's see. No, I've noticed this. This happens quite frequently when I do this with the Curve Tube Snap Brush sometimes. I'm not entirely sure how to fix it either. It's very frustrating. So, in that regard, so that we don't waste any time, I'm going to go straight in and grab an insert mesh brush and do something like this instead. And once I've got that in position, I'm going to do split unmasked polys so that these have been removed from the mesh, and now we can work on them independently. So I'm going to turn on dynamic local symmetry and start working these up. And what this gives me is just a little bit of extra geometry to work with while I sculpt around the eye. And eventually they will just be dynameshed in, but it just gives me that extra little isolated piece of geo that I can start to create the eyelids with. It's not ideal by any means, but it works. And this is what I would always recommend. If you are kind of at a loss with a particular part of a creature or a character that you're working on, isolate it out. You know, don't struggle trying to create it on the mesh that you've already got. Okay? You know, this is the thing. Take advantage of the fact that we're working in a digital medium. Okay? There is a lot to be said for taking on traditional approaches, and being inspired by the traditional approach of how we make things, or how things used to be made by hand. But don't make your life unnecessarily difficult while you're working either, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subdivide that and start to sculpt in where the eyelid's going to go. But Pat, making things difficult for myself is my middle name. Well, I mean, again, it's very kind of each to their own, really. Whatever floats your boat. Buoyancy control. Sorry, folks. I'm at that age. I make dad jokes. I'm not a dad, but I make dad jokes. So. Okay. So we're starting to get somewhere now. Also count if you're an uncle. Well, I'm an uncle, so, I am an uncle. So I'm going to subdivide again. And you can see that the more we subdivide, the more we're starting to get the shape that we need for this eyelid. And then we can start to push it back into the mesh more and more. They really did decide to make his eye really small. It's a wonder he can see. Maybe that's why he's angry all the time. You know, he can't actually see what he's doing, so he's like, you know, he's not sure what people are actually doing. That's why he kind of has to lean forward and squint at them all the time. I know how that feels. Right. Let's just get... How are we doing on time? Okay. Been a bit of a slower one this evening, folks. I mean, I'm in the middle of a project at the moment. I've got a job on right now. So a lot of my energy is going into that. However, you know, that should be finishing this week. And then I will be back to my a different streaming schedule. I'll be back to my afternoon streaming schedule for Firestorm eventually. So, and also we might actually take a break from the A to Z of creatures, and just as a one-off, we might do a maybe something on retopology using Topogun. Not a tutorial of such, but just a kind of demonstration, really, in case anyone's interested in that. I'm just going to now clean up what I've done. I'm actually just going to turn off the... I've got the eyeballs in here separate. I'm going to turn off the material just to make it a bit easier to see the edges. I'm not really... I'm glad I did that because the lower eyelid's terrible looking. It looks rubbish. So, absolutely rubbish. So we'll inflate those together. That's better. Grab the move brush and just start tweaking into place. To give you an idea, what I generally tend to go for first whenever I'm trying to lay the eyelid down is I'm going for the shape that I want first. Going for the shape that I want the eye to be, and then after that, then I'll clean up the edges, make it sharper, that type of thing. Pinch brush is going to be your friend here if you're not at the retopology stage. Just lower the intensity a bit, and you can just run that pinch brush along the edge very lightly. And obviously your move topological brush, and just make sure you keep rotating around the eye. Just make sure that you're getting the lid wrapping around the eyeball, okay? And the overlap, that's another important thing. You want to get that overlap in. Top lid over the bottom lid. Exaggerate it more than you have to if you need to, okay? There we go. Maybe be a bit gentler with the knocking this back. There we go. Okay, let's zoom all the way out. Yeah, that's getting there. So what I'll do now is we're going to merge this together. So we'll do a merge down. And we will do our usual. We're going to grab the remesh by union, but we're going to turn off symmetry. And then hit accept. I'm going to fix up my axis, and then we're going to turn our symmetry back on. Check our wireframe. And then using the Sculptris Pro and the smooth, we'll do what we've done a million times before, and we'll start blending it in to the rest of the head. And this can sometimes naturally add sometimes more or less geometry to the area that you're sculpting around, okay? So I'm just going to go in and just gently tap on that surface there. I don't want to change the shape too much. And then once I've got that, I can turn off Sculptress Pro and I continue working in the details. Or I say the details, just working in the form a little bit more. Well, what I'll start to, what time are we at? Okay, we're half an hour. We've got another half hour left. So I'm going to throw it out there. Curious to how many people out there watched the PlayStation State of Play last week. There were some really cool titles announced, I felt. One of the ones I was most actually excited about was the sequel to Kena Bridge of Spirits. So excited that I've actually forgotten what the sequel is called. But I'm very much looking forward to that game. I really enjoyed the first one. I find the little rock characters that they've got just so funny to kind of interact with. So yeah. Right, let's see. So now that I've got that in place, I can start to see how they've actually put this guy together. There we go. I'm going to do a couple of small additions here. Grab the damn standard. And we want to get this nice, heavy, layered look to the eyes. Because it's a big animal, so he's going to have a lot of compression in that area, which is, I think, why they've went with such small eyes. I think a lot of what they did with the new design for Godzilla was, I think they tried to ground him just a little bit too much in reality, which I do understand. There was a big push for that, you know, to have things grounded in reality, but it doesn't really always work with something like Godzilla. You kind of need that that unbelievable aspect of him. He is a giant. He's a giant lizard after all. So again, just starting to build up some of these smaller details around the eye. But one of the things I do kind of believe is that obviously we talk about form a lot. And I think there is a point when you're doing creature design that those forms, they're scalable. So for example, what I would consider I'm doing right now is a primary form for the area around his eye because it's important to the shape of his eye. But yet, if I was to do this on a human scale character, it would be more a tertiary detail, right? Because it would be considered wrinkle detail. But I think for Godzilla, or a creature of similar size like a kaiju, it comes under more of a primary form because it is important. It sells his shape, you know. And I'm sure there's a lot of established creature people out there that probably disagree with that, but it's just how I look at it. I look at it because it allows me to design and sculpt the character a little bit easier for myself, really, if I'm being honest. So there we go. And I will be streaming again. Well, sorry, I am hoping to be streaming this Wednesday. The reason I'm saying hoping is that I have a dentist appointment that day, and it's an hour long. It's an hour long appointment, so I'm not sure if I'll actually be able to stream or not on that day. So we'll see. We'll see if how sore my mouth is. And you fear they're going to steal all your teeth. Well, I'm getting a filling replaced. So my fear is that I won't be able to feel my mouth. The anesthetic for me always tends to take quite a while to wear off, so I am concerned that I won't be able to talk properly. And nobody comes to my personal streams for the work. It's all about the rambling. It's all about the rambling. Okay. Okay. So what I'm also going to do here, just to actually help the weight a bit here, we're going to go into brush, into the depth options, and under the gravity strength, I'm just going to increase that a little bit. What that's going to do is it's going to weight my brush in a particular direction. So it's going to save me some time when I'm doing something like a heavy wrinkle, like over the eye, like this. It's going to weight the brush on the bottom edge. I come for the rambling and the work. Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it. Okay, how long we got, folks? All right, 25 minutes. Okay, this didn't take as long as I thought it might. All these features I never knew existed. Well, what I'll do here, folks, is, let me show you. I'll show you how this works in a second once I've finished scribbling. Okay, so, hey, but thanks, Peter. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. And what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to fill this section in here. Generally, when I'm using something like the gravity or the weight or the kind of weight on the brush, I will not put it up that heavy, and I'll show you why. Because it can damage the look a little bit. So yeah, we'll just. All right. And then that's then going to take us quite nicely out onto the. Wait a minute, brush. Yeah, I don't. Also, it will be brush specific. That's something I always check that. I always have to I always second guess myself, but it will be brush specific for the weight. Okay, so just be aware of that. So I'm just gonna. There we go. And we'll just add a bit more into here. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to isolate this down even further. Like so. And just do delete hidden and close holes. And close holes didn't actually work properly, but we'll also do an auto groups, and then I'm just going to highlight these two bits here, delete hidden, and there we have our meshes. So now, if we go back to our original option, you can see how that now fits into the mesh. And if we wanted to, for the time being, we can leave this, I refer to it as a floater. I know that's maybe doesn't sound like a particularly nice thing, but basically it's just a piece of geo that's going to float there on the mesh. But you can see here that the way because I'm a fool, I have screwed that up. So we're going to go back to this and just step all the way back to here before I did a fill hole. There we go. Because what I want to be able to do is make sure that's not sitting too proud. Okay, so we can obviously project that back in at a later date, but for the time being, I'm just going to leave it in there as it is. And yes, so I said I promised I said I would show about the gravity brush. So let me just save this and I'll show you all what I mean and how it works. So let's just open up a plane. It's the best way to demonstrate this. Make that a polymesh 3D. I'm going to subdivide it until we get a few because we want a decent amount of geometry here. I'll just take the standard brush, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually fill this object with, let's do grey. There we go. And then we're going to use a red brush. So if I have, there we go. So I've turned on RGB on my brush. So now when I paint, or I kind of create a stroke, I get a color and I get some actual depth to it. Okay. So by default, if we just create a stroke with the standard brush, it looks like that. Okay. If I was to start adding something like a fold, or say I wanted a curve in a piece of cloth, I could do something like this, right? So that looks okay. And then I would have to go in and I'd have to work into this a bit more to create a fold. But if I go into the brush menu here, and under depth, I change my gravity to 100, and I do the same thing, you see what's happened here is, and this is what I was saying before, is that I don't really want to put that up to the highest level because it's not actually going to give me the effect I need. It's not going to be subtle enough. So you can see that at 100, it's not really doing much. But if we go to something like 40 or 50, excuse me, see if this will actually, there we go. There we go. So now, if we then go in and increase it a little bit more, what I'm eventually going to get is a weighting towards one part of the brush. So you might have to overlap your stroke a couple of times, but now you can see that the shadow is darker on the bottom because there's more weight being pushed down on the stroke, like so. So the more that I build this up, the more it starts to hang. And then you can obviously do the same with the alternate version of the brush. Just smooth that back. And then you will have your fold. So now, another thing you can do as well, actually I don't have it on my menu, but you can also go into, say for example you want to accentuate a stroke, you can say you draw it out like this. If you go into stroke and hit replay last, it will accentuate the exact same stroke that you did before, okay? And then you can smooth it down like that. What I would personally do is I would make up my own brushes for this type of thing. You know, make a VDM brush in Zbrush to kind of create the effect that you want, and then you can just, you know, paint it out onto all your models. So there we go. That is our VDM, sorry, that's how the gravity feature on the brush works. So before we go any further, let's take a look at this. There's quite a lot going on in here, so I'm going to hit double, and I'm just going to delete some of this stuff. Turn off the line, and then do something like that. Delete hidden. There we go. And in here, what I can do is if I do Control W, I can take the lasso selection tool and I can start removing any part of it that I don't need, like so. just to kind of remove some of the overlapping areas that aren't that attractive looking right now. So I think, yeah, I do quite like the fact that we're kind of using Godzilla as a bit of a really good way to kind of cover some, tutorial style aspects of ZBrush. This is actually quite a lot of fun. We lost our subdivision surface again, pressure sensitivity though. So there we go. Let's keep that going. There we go. Using this as my tester. Just want to make sure that all of this is moving the way I need it to. And we should probably finish this off by getting some teeth into his mouth, right? That would be that'd be nice of us. Give Godzilla some teeth. And again, folks, one thing to remember is that, if there is anything that you specifically want to see from these streams, do let us know in the Discord. If I've deliberately slowed these down, if people want me to return back to the kind of faster pace that that we did before, then let me know. And just going to now flatten out the edge here just a bit. There we go. Okay, time for teeth. Now his teeth are an interesting one because they are all over the place. And some of them jut out of his kind of gum and then his lower lip tend to kind of merge into one. So there's a bit of that. So let's begin by first creating ourselves a tooth that we can work with here. We will do a cube and initialize that into a 1x1 Q cube. Which we will smooth a couple of times and delete the subdivisions for. There we go. I'm going to delete half of it. Do I want to delete? Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave the whole thing for the time being. And now I just get to start reshaping this based on the reference I've got. And again, the shape of the teeth, they're all over the place a little bit. But we will make do. Oh, no. There we go. Let's get this into rough shape. We could use the taper brush and stuff, but sometimes it's just fun to actually sculpt the tooth. Take the standard brush. I'm going to actually just make a new poly group because I found that the rainbow colors there it just doesn't come across as having all those kind of like multiple kind of rainbow style group doesn't give you the same kind of menace that you really want with a Godzilla tooth. So we'll stick with one singular poly group. So Let's get a little bit more shape in here. And I'm deliberately giving myself a bit of a root here, just to, this is me just trying to kind of preempt how I'm going to have to sit or seat the tooth into the rest of the model. So, and again, we can use the pinch brush here, but I've said before, be very, very careful when you're using the pinch brush. You don't want you want to kind of approach it quite gently so that you don't end up overlapping your polygons, okay? You don't want edges overlapping. And again, it's all fixable, but it's just something to be aware of. Right, I think what we need to do now is get a bit of a center line on this. So we're going to click, drag, and here's a little trick, folks. Actually, let's use the damn standard. If you click on a surface, obviously you can then sculpt on it. But if I click and then hold shift, it's going to let me drag out a nice red line. And then if I line it up so it's nice and straight, release shift, and it will create a lovely straight line right up our model. Okay. Is that right? Yeah, it looks okay. That'll do. And then we can go back and start reshaping the tooth a bit more. I want to go for this. There's not much of a scallop on the inside of the tooth, but that's looking not bad. And we'll take our damn standard again, subdivide one more time. We'll just start to add some grooves. Trying it now. Honest to God, watching you, I feel like I was too sloppy to have been in VFX. You are far too kind, Pete. I really appreciate it. That's a very kind thing for you to say. It's funny you say sloppy because I've been described as a sloppy sculptor because I sketch so much. But I always remember something that a teacher I once had when I was at university. He saw how I sketched when I did my life drawing, and I remember him saying to me, he went, "I'd love to see you actually animate in that style, like do all your key, do your keys and your in betweens and stuff, do it like that." And I was like, "Sure, I'll do that one day, Ian." And honestly, it just never transpired that way. I've just never been a great animator. Okay, so we'll take the inflate brush now, and I'm just going to, here's another trick you can do. If you're trying to kind of create creatures and stuff like this, and you want to add, but you're trying to do it at speed, or quicker, right? Because you're like, right, I don't want to have to worry about that detail. Start making yourself some custom alphas and apply them to brushes you might not normally apply them to. Like, for example, if I take my alpha brush here and I put something like the alpha 15 on, right? When I actually start to inflate the object, it will take on some of the alpha's small little design shapes. So we can create a root for the tooth really quickly and not have to worry too much about going back and adding more detail. It's already there for us. Then we can jump into the damn standard brush and start to accentuate some of that root detail. Again, you wouldn't do all these lines completely symmetrically because they're not going to be symmetrical, but, and then we can do something like that. The root doesn't matter really unless you're planning on having a tooth come missing or come loose. Which, to be fair, with a creature like the creature like Godzilla, there's a good chance that's going to happen. Okay, and then we could take something. If I go into my light box, I'm going to show you a set of brushes that you should definitely have if you're sculpting in ZBrush. You can do all of what you need to do more or less with the standard brushes in ZBrush. You don't need external stuff. It's going to take you quite a while to customize it, but you don't need it. However, you can speed up your your work by doing this, okay? By finding brushes that speed up that sculpting process. I'm trying to find where they are. There we go. Is it? No, 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 nope. Where are we? Oh, it's in environment. That's where I put them. Or no, is it hard surface? Nope, I think they're in environment. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So the orb crack brush set. Definitely grab these if you can. You will find them freely available on the internet. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this orb slash brush here. I'm going to turn off symmetry, and what that's going to allow me to do, if I subdivide one more time, and spotlight would get out of my way, is it's going to allow me to start adding some extra detail onto the tooth. Like so. And then that can then just influence wherever else you want to put more detail. And you're going to find other, like, you know, there's longer brushes as well. There's longer kind of scratches and things that you can use to kind of quickly add a bit of detail to the tooth. And it pays to spend time. If you're going to have an asset like this that you're probably going to reuse, spend a bit of extra time and just get it looking kind of how you want. And then, and you can see I'm not spending a particularly long amount of time here. Okay, and now what I've got is a tooth that I can reshape and adjust multiple times for the creature's mouth. And if I wanted to, I could turn it into an insert mesh brush, and I can then literally drag it wherever I need it to go. But for us, for our purposes, I'm going to start by putting in the main teeth for him. And that's the thing, his teeth aren't actually that big. How are we doing for time? We're right at the 8 o'clock point, I'm afraid, folks. So we might have to go over a little bit. This tooth rotates here. This is going to be kind of my, I want to get this tooth in the right place because this is going to be, or as close as I can get it, because this is going to be the tooth I use to kind of guide where the rest of them all go. Right, let's have a quick look at the other reference. Where are we? Bum, bum, bum. Is that a double row? No, it's not a double row. Or is it? No, it isn't. Okay. So we'll just pull this in to here. And I don't have a gum line in here. That was a mistake on my part. Okay, so we'll leave this as a temporary thing. So there's one of the teeth. And we're going to then hold down control. What first thing I'm going to do is, oh no, it's fine. It's in the right angle. So I'm going to hold down control, click and drag, which I can't do because it's got multiple subdivisions. Dang, I always forget about that. So what we'll do instead is we'll just duplicate it manually, and we will rescale that. Get that roughly into position. Yeah, that looks actually not too bad. Jump back to the original one, pull it further back and just extend it out ever so slightly. And then we'll duplicate that one again and we'll move that all the way back to here. We'll pull that further into the mouth and we'll rotate it because it looks like that one's curling in a little bit more. And of course, there's nothing stopping us from going into something like the bend curve, which we can't do because of the freeze transformations, and then adjusting it. But because we can't do that, I'm just going to make sure I have AccuCurve on, and I'll just grab the end of the tooth and just curl it in like so. What we'll do, it's actually not bad for 5 minutes of work. See, as soon as you put teeth in him, he immediately starts looking like Godzilla. Funny that, right? But we are going to need to do something. I've just noticed something that's kind of bothering me. We're going to have to do something about the gum line. So I'm going to switch gears here. I'm just going to start using the dam standard to dig quite deeply into the mesh here. Increase the intensity. Really want to kind of create that separation. We're going to have to add more geometry here, but I'm okay with that. It's going to be quite messy at the moment, but that's fine. And that's just so that we can add a little bit of separation between the gum and the lip. There's not much on the character, but if I mask that out, bring his teeth back and grab something like the move brush here. Now I can start kind of curling up the lip. If I really, really wanted to, I could start kind of curling up the lip to expose part of that gum. So there's a chance that what we'll do is we might try and separate out the inside of the mouth a bit more once we get further along. But this is not too bad where we're kind of leaving this off. I don't think. Don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm desperate to just jump in with all the detail, but that's not going to be useful to folk if we just jump straight into the details. And if we have time, we'll put a little goose on top of his head. A goose with a blade in its mouth, you know. Okay, folks, right. Okay, so we had a bit of an interesting one this evening. Oh, one last little thing, just to show you. If you take the inflate brush and change its stroke type to drag rectangle, and then give yourself something like an alpha 39 with quite a big intensity, you can start to create, if it'll let me. Oh, is that the wrong one? It is. Silly me, sorry, it's the wrong alpha. There we go. And take something like one of the small alphas, like alpha 36. You can actually start to build out lumps like this. And you don't need any custom brushes, you don't need anything like that. You just need that there, okay? So just do a few bits and bobs like this. There we go. Please. Well, I guess we're going to have to do it then, won't we? We'll just have to, put a wee goose on top. All right. So again, folks, please do feel free to go and join the Discord. Let us know what you think about these streams. Let us know if does this slower style work for you guys from the streams that I'm doing. Obviously, I can if you have other comments about other streams, feel free to, and I mean good comments, positive feedback, So if the slower, more kind of tutorial based, this is how you can do different things in ZBrush approach works best for my streams, please do let us know. If you would like me to return to a kind of quicker, faster, sketchier approach, then we can do that as well, or we can mix it up. It's really it's really good to get this type of feedback, folks, so we know what we need to be creating stream-wise, or I do anyway. All right. So with that in mind, folks, I'm going to leave you all there to the rest of your Monday evening. I hope everyone has had. No, yes, Chris. No, that's not helpful. The little thumbs up at the end, that just adds to it, Okay, so folks, like I said, thank you all very much for coming along. I hope you all have a wonderful Monday evening wherever you are, and I hope to see you all next week, where we'll be continuing with Godzilla. And as I said, please remember to check out the Firestorm socials. Check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and definitely go over and join the Discord and join us there. Say hi, kind of chat to us, because again, we're in live chats quite often, so you can talk to us directly. All right. Okay, folks, no problem. My pleasure. All right. And yes, I will see you all next time. Take care.